My name is Arber, and welcome to the Formica Table podcast, episode 1. It is happening again. We're going to be talking about all things Twin Peaks related, especially with the eagerly anticipated season 3 nearly upon us, but also the broader works of David Lynch, hopefully putting them into, some kind of context. I'm joined around the Formica Table by Mark Walker and Killer Rob, so I think we should do some introductions. So, Mark, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes. I'm an aging filmmaker, slash screenwriter slash artist of sorts. I've dabbled in directing television drama and music videos and whatnot, and some of those have overlapped with Jason. I'm a father. I don't know what else I can say about myself.
Okay, Killer Rob, what can you tell us about yourself?
Let's see now. Yeah, my name's Rob Valentine. I'm a writer and director, mainly of audio drama, and at the moment I'm mostly just writing. And I take my coffee white, no sugar. There you go.
I'd just like to add that I take my coffee as black as a moonless night, and that's because my bowels are a bit dodgy. And I can't handle the milk.
Good to know. Useful information. Well, I'm also filmmaker and photographer. Do a little bit of everything. So I thought we'd start off by going around the table and discussing our first experiences with not necessarily Twin Peaks, but our first experiences of seeing Lynch for the first time. So maybe Mark, you could tell us how you first came across the works of David Lynch.
I wasn't prepared for that, but that's an interesting question. You caught me off guard because I thought we were only going to talk about Twin Peaks, but I do remember seeing a bit. I think my grandfather and my dad were watching The Elephant Man when I was really young, and it scared the crap out of me. And I think it was probably just the beginning, and then I got sort of ushered out of the living room, you know. But there's a sequence where you a kind of dream sequence where the Elephant Man's mother is trampled by elephants, I think, and then there's a kind of locomotive sequence, and I remember that, and of course I realised much later that this weird black and white disturbing sequence that I'd experienced at maybe age 5, something like that, was of course a David Lynch movie. But that made an impression, and I think Dune as well. I mean, it's sort of much maligned, but I mean, at the time, you know, you don't have any critical facility when you're 10 or 11, and I saw Dune, and I was like, you know, for me it was like Star Wars. You know, I just wanted everything. I had the sticker book, but I wanted the toys as well. I didn't get them, fortunately, but I begged and sort of drooled over them in the supermarkets, things like that. But you know, it didn't happen. But yeah, that had an impact on me as well. But primarily, Twin Peaks was definitely my way in. That was the doorway into all things Lynch, and I think I might have caught snippets here and there, channel hopping, but there was one particular night. Also a friend had a copy of The Secret Diary of Laura Palmer, and there was one little sequence that I read, which was sort of skinny dipping in the lake, and yeah, I mean, being 14, something like 14, I mean, it was kind of like erect nipples and all that super exciting stuff. But I didn't sort of link that in with Twin Peaks until I saw. And I really came at it at a weird point, because I spoiler alert, but the first episode I saw was I was at home alone, I think, babysitting my younger sister, and I saw the episode. It's possibly the worst point to come into Twin Peaks. It was the episode where you find out who the killer is, and but it was so amazing. and so kind of I mean, unlike anything else on television in 1991, when it was broadcast on BBC Two in the UK, it was Leland looking in the mirror, and I think I was just hopping through channels, and then I just landed on this image of Leland looking in the mirror, and then seeing Bob, kind of smiling back at him, and I was, from that moment, I was hooked. That was it. I was in. I was like, what the hell is this? It's creepy as hell. And then the whole sequence, where Maddie is murdered, and everybody knows that it's happening again, and that the rest of the cast are sitting and listening to Julie Cruz in the Roadhouse, and it's really weirdly, non-verbally emotional, and it was really unlike anything else on television, and that I, especially that I'd seen at that age, and yeah, I was hooked. I remember my art teacher was talking about this television series by David Lynch, and I had no idea who David Lynch was at that point. But the guy had made Blue Velvet, and I hadn't seen Blue Velvet obviously either. But yeah, it was like from that point on, I didn't care that I'd come in halfway. I didn't, I wasn't concerned. It was the tone, it was the atmosphere, it was the world, that just sucked you in. It was just unlike anything else.
So how did you go about going back and seeing the episodes beforehand? Because this is obviously in the days before
exactly,
Netflix.
Yeah. So I mean, I was rabid with when it finished, because Twin Peaks as well, that it had this effect where it sort of occupied your thoughts from it was broadcast on Tuesday nights at 9:00, I think, on BBC Two, and from 10:00 on Tuesday night after it ended to 9:00 the next week, it would kind of occupy your thoughts, your mind. It would fill your brain. It certainly did mine anyway. And then when it ended, it was like the worst come down ever. It was, when you finish a book and you feel a bit empty. I mean, it was, it was, and also knowing that there was not going to be any more. It was horrible. So I was running around school and teachers and anybody I could think of who might happen to have an episode lingering around on a VHS tape that they hadn't gotten around to taping over yet, I think I managed to sort of piece together bits and bobs, no pun intended there, but I was rabid to see what I'd missed. And I think since, obviously you appreciate what happened to the series. I mean, now I can see obviously that where I came into it is kind of where it was the kind of the beginning of definitely the best bit of the series, and it sort of declined from there on.
Yeah.
Certainly after Leland's passing, but still, it was just, just the tone and the atmosphere and the sort of sense of place, was enough to hold me through to the end and keep me kind of spellbound,
And Rob, what about you? Lynch and Twin Peaks.
Okay, well, my first experience of David Lynch was my first experience of Twin Peaks. I looked it up. It was June the 18th, 1991, and I was 11. And I'd switched over to BBC Two one night to see a dark-haired man in pyjamas enter a bathroom, smash his head into the mirror, and then have this scary grey-haired guy grinning back at him. And then he started laughing and said, "How's Annie? How's Annie?" And that was the end of it. And I thought, okay, well, that's Twin Peaks. I've heard mention of this on breakfast TV or whatever. And I had no idea it was the final scene. And then it was, then I had to wait about 7 or 8 years or so to catch it all at uni with my flatmates. We got them all out on VHS from Peer Video down on the seafront. And it was a lovely communal thing we'd do. We'd all get together and watch Twin Peaks, and then we caned it, basically. And it was only as we were getting sort of halfway through season 2, I started to realise, oh yeah, I know where I came in. So I kind of spoiled it for myself slightly. So that was my introduction to Lynch and to Twin Peaks. But then my second one was Dune again. Doing homework one night, I was about 13 or something, and found it on Channel 4, and it was weird and potty, and I loved it. And yeah, that was my That was my secondary introduction, and that was kind of it.
Yeah, because I think Dune definitely has a power to it. In fact, I'll stand by it now. I mean, I still love it.
Yeah, I mean it's campy, but with Sting's kind of winged underpants.
But I like that. I mean, I like Sting in his underpants. It's so bizarre. It's so kind of audacious that and I think it represents a sort of a kind of tangent or a fork in the road for Lynch. It gives you a taste of what might have been. I mean, he was a filmmaker. His first sort of proper feature, if you don't count Eraserhead, which was kind of a long art film, it was funded by the American Arts, but Elephant Man was certainly his first narrative film, and it was nominated for an Oscar, and he was on this kind of trajectory with that, and then Dune, and if Dune had been a success, we would have seen a very different David Lynch, I think. So it's interesting to get a taste of that, to see Lynch with pretty much unlimited budget and creative control. Of course, he got sort of stepped on a little bit, I think, with the editing and all that. But I mean, still fascinating to see what might have been.
My first experience of David Lynch was actually seeing Eraserhead at a very impressionable age. I think I'd heard rumblings, about this film, and I must have been, this would have been early 80s. So I was probably in my early teens, and I stayed up especially to watch this film on a small black and white TV that we had, which was made no difference because the film was in black and white, and I was just absolutely astonished by this film. It was completely unlike anything that I had seen before, and it flipped a switch in me where I was like, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And it was the thing that made me want to go to film school, and that's what ended up happening. So it was very fortuitous, seeing that film. And I think from that moment on, I was a David Lynch fan. And I had seen, before seeing Twin Peaks, I think I'd consumed as much David Lynch as was available at the time, like going to see Blue Velvet and seeing Dune, and loving Blue Velvet. And so when I heard about Twin Peaks, I knew it was for me. And by the time it started airing in the UK in 1990, I was about 22 and I was at university.
Crikey, you're quite a bit older than me, aren't you?
Yeah. And I had got my VHS recorder all set up, and so when it came on, I recorded every single episode and had them all lined up on my shelf so I could dip into them whenever I liked. So once the show was over, I would watch it regularly, with friends, and that was quite an exciting thing. But the first version of Twin Peaks that I saw was the special European film version.
Yeah.
They did in case the networks didn't take the thing up, and it ended with the kind of weird.
Yeah, the sort of ending that's not really an ending at all.
Bob being shot, by the one-armed man.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
and it was very strange, but it did kind of like package the whole thing up in a very kind of like neat kind of way.
Well,
ish.
Yeah.
I mean, at the time, my
yeah.
recollection is I was like, that was pretty cool. And and then when it was shown on BBC Two, I was like, yeah, I'm so there. I'm so ready for this. So I wanted to talk now about perhaps what makes Twin Peaks itself so compelling for us on a personal level. I mean, we've spoken about how we were first introduced to it, but what for each of us makes Twin Peaks something really, really special? So, Mark, what made it compelling for you?
I think for me, it sort of gave me this awareness of just my environment. I think it sort of transformed my environment so that I would sort of superimpose Twin Peaks onto this sort of semi-rural suburban village that I grew up in, and it became, my hometown sort of became my Twin Peaks in a way, thanks to Twin Peaks.
Well, I can definitely see links between Nottingham and the town of Twin Peaks.
Yeah, I mean, I think what was amazing about Twin Peaks is it there's these sort of lingering shots of trees in the wind, and Dale Cooper would be talking about Douglas firs and what kind of woodpecker, a palliated woodpecker, this kind of stuff is not necessarily stuff you stop and think about when you're a teenager, and I think I really appreciated that, and it was a kind of appreciation of kind of atmosphere and tone, and I think particularly for school kids at the time who were living in sort of rural or suburban areas, it made these places kind of exciting. I think in Twin Peaks there's this kind of disconnect between parents and their kids, and kids kind of had these sort of secret lives, and that was perfectly in tune with what was happening, at that time when I was a school kid, and saying, you this kind of sexual awakening, and feeling that you're no longer sort of tied to your mother's apron, and the umbilical cord was getting cut, and you were sort of finding out who you were as a sort of as a sort of individual, and that was the perfect representation of that. These kids, they had this sort of public face, the homecoming queen, which was, everybody loved her, and and then underneath, she was part of this kind of underworld of, sort of prostitution and cocaine taking. I mean, there's nothing anywhere near that exciting happening in North Nottinghamshire, but not for me anyway. But still, that idea that you could have this sort of other life, and it was yours, and it was, just remember walking the dog and just suddenly being aware of, the wind in the trees and the moonlight and the way the street lamps kind of hit the pavement. And yeah, I really credit all that to Twin Peaks, especially when I was walking around, with Julie Cruz on my Walkman, and, everything got transformed. And I don't think that's ever really left me. It gave a sort of magic to the reality that I was living in at the time. It elevated things.
What about you, Rob?
Well, I was watching it, by the time I was watching it, I was about 19. So it became part of a lot of the stuff I was kind of watching with my mates in our student digs in our second year. And for me, it's a wonderful world to return to, and a wonderful town of characters to spend time with, and that was what I loved about it. It was soaking myself back into it every time we got to see another episode. And Aberystwyth, which is where I was, is a very weird town anyway, so it just seemed to just be this really lovely extra dimension I could come back to. And the funny thing was, around that time, obviously, the X-Files was huge, and so was the Blair Witch Project. And Dale Cooper, or an analogous figure, who is Dale Cooper, really, was even turned up in, there's a PS2 game, Blair Witch Rustin Parr. And so a lot of the stuff we were consuming they were the children of Twin Peaks.
Yeah.
Because I think Twin Peaks was a good 9 years old by the time I got around to watching it myself. And everything that had followed owed so much to it. And stuff from the same period, Silence of the Lambs and JFK. There's something about that period I found really fascinating when, sort of post-Cold War, but pre-millennium, where there were no external threats left. The Russians weren't out there anymore causing anxiety. It was America, and America's fathers were where the evil lay, and so it just felt really it felt just like the quintessential 1990s TV show. I mean, the X-Files got the ratings and the longevity, and really kind of broke through to the mainstream, but it wouldn't exist without Twin Peaks, which is, to be honest, the perfect statement of that period, and that's what I loved about it.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to know that David Duchovny was an FBI agent in Twin Peaks.
Yeah, exactly.
He was an FBI agent.
Yeah, and going to be again in season 3, so that's kind of pretty cool.
Yeah.
And the whole Operation Blue Book and Major Briggs, but also just the iconic pine forests and the torchlight and the rain and the mist. That's pure Twin Peaks. Small town horror. It's all there. It's all there, just ready to get exploited big time by Chris Carter.
What do you think? What do you think is what's the has anything come close? I mean, we credit Twin Peaks with a kind of with being the sort of forefather of this golden age of television that we've got, and definitely you can see it in things even as sort of comparatively sort of sober as like Sopranos, for example, which relies on Tony Soprano's sort of quite he has these quite surreal turns where he does the whole thing when he gets shot, he has these strange dreams.
Yeah.
It has a sort of a thread of surreality running through it, and that was started in '99. But I mean, there's a lot of children of Twin Peaks. I just What is there anything that truly deserves the mantle?
Well, I'm not sure whether it truly deserves it, but I don't think there would be Lost without Twin Peaks.
Yeah. You see, that's interesting because I would say that we've talked about this before, Jason, but I gave Lost I think 6 episodes and I was like, this doesn't know what the hell it's doing.
Well, you were completely right.
and I'm not going to give it any more of my time. But credit to what's his name, Damon
Lindelof.
Thank you.
Carlton Cuse were the showrunners.
I just binged Leftovers, which is his series after that, which I think is actually really fantastic. It's gotten better and better.
Yeah, I've heard good things about it. I've not seen it yet.
It's really, really good.
Yeah,
really good. I could recommend it.
Cool. But I think the main thing that for me, at any rate, that Twin Peaks brought to the table, apart from its very overt weirdness, was the fact that we had a filmmaker come to television and bring a filmmaker's sensibility.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, the thing looked amazing. It didn't really look like anything else on TV at the time, and I think
not just a filmmaker though as well. I mean, he was an artist. I mean, he was primarily a fine artist that kind of started making films. I mean, he's also a filmmaker that was unlike any other filmmaker pretty much out there. So he not just a filmmaker. He was kind of just this really interesting voice in television. There'd really not been anybody like that.
I mean, he's very uncompromising as well. Yeah. So whereas you could imagine other filmmakers moving to TV and accepting the limitations of the format, whereas you don't really get that sense from David Lynch. You get the sense that he was like, okay, this is television, but I'm going to bring my sensibility to it for good or for bad. Yeah. And it seemed to work. I
think it's a case that he's not able to do anything else.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I mean, Dune is probably a good case in point in that he can't not do stuff the way he does it. He's unable to do anything else. I don't even think it's necessarily a case of him kind of being bullish about it. He's just that's what he is.
Well, there's that lovely story about when I think it was his first day on, or at least his first day shooting with John Hurt on The Elephant Man, and he turned up, to set, or I think he was sharing a car to set with John Hurt, and he was talking about the mask that he'd made for him, and he'd made this sort of paper mache Elephant Man mask because he'd gone on to this movie. It was the same person who made Eraserhead who'd started then making the Elephant Man, and he had no idea that there was going to be all this kind of prosthetics and and someone Mel Brooks said, it's all right, David, we've got a whole department working on that, and there's that sort of lovely naivety, that kind of like hands-on tactile filmmaker or artist that he was, that carries through. I mean, to everything that right up to Inland Empire. He's filming himself on a high 8. Love it or loathe it, but I mean, he's really in there. He's in the picture.
But I mean, when we're talking about Twin Peaks, we can't ignore the input of Mark Frost. And I was wondering what you thought that Mark Frost brings to the table, and in what ways, if any, he kind of reins in the way he might do things.
Well, I suppose he's the antithesis of the fine artist in a way. I mean, he sort of brought, the Hill Street Blues, Mark Frost, the sort of police procedural into Twin Peaks, and I think they sort of tempered each other beautifully. He's definitely, if Lynch is the booze, he's the kind of he's the kind of hangover breakfast. And
I thought you were going to say peanuts on the bar, but
yeah, that would be better. Yeah, and he kind of, I think I think in a lot of ways you look at the first season, and I think that's more Mark Frost, or at least a balance between the two.
Yeah,
and I think the second season, which arguably it really comes into its own. I think that opening two-parter for the second season is really Lynch putting his stamp on it. Leland's hair turns white, and there's this lovely scene at the end of that where Leland starts, "Come on, everybody, get happy," it's the Haywood. Is it the Haywood family, or one of the Haywood girls is playing piano? It felt like things had stepped up another gear, another Lynch gear, and from that point up until Leland's death, that for me, that's when we talk about Twin Peaks. That's the sort of essential. But sorry, not to get away from Mark Frost, but I think definitely he tempered Lynch's more kind of artistic tendencies to go mental, and probably allowed the shape of the thing to he was probably the soap opera side of thing, which is there's no getting away from it. That's the format.
Oh yeah, that's its basic framework. That's the core inspiration. Really, it's a soap opera.
Yeah, I mean. Me and Rob were talking a day or so ago about this, and I was saying that, to my mind, David Lynch actually works better when he has some constraints around him.
Yeah.
And I gave the example of Mulholland Drive, where this was obviously a pilot for another TV show which went nowhere, and he had to take those pieces and go, okay, what am I going to do with this now? And turned it into an amazing film, which wouldn't have existed unless he had those particular problems, those particular constraints. And when you have unfettered David Lynch, then
you get Inland Empire.
Which, as you said, love it or loathe it. That is David Lynch doing exactly what he wants.
But I mean, it's still an interesting ride. I mean, it's still a ride that I wouldn't miss.
Yeah. I mean, it has some amazing moments in it, but
it's something I saw in the cinema, and I haven't gone back to. I haven't revisited, not in this, not in the same way that I've seen Wild at Heart, maybe, I don't know, 20, 30 times.
Yeah. I saw it in Inland Empire. I appreciated it. I'm not going to go back to it anytime soon, I don't think. But it's kind of like reading a difficult book. That one, I find you kind of you kind of think, well, no, I'm going to stick with this now, and but it's not easy to get through. But I wouldn't not. But I don't hate it. I just I'm not going to watch it. I'm not going to watch it again. Anytime.
But in a way, I felt this. But on the same token, I felt the same about the Straight Story.
Yeah, that's another interesting one, actually.
Which is quite the polar opposite.
Yes,
of Inland Empire.
Yeah.
It's a script that he didn't write. It's a project that was brought to him rather than originating with him.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw it once. I enjoyed it. I liked it. I was moved by it. But I don't feel the need to go back to it.
Yeah.
I think what's crucial is, like you were saying, Jason, is when you get this mix. When Lynch is kind of, when the crazy Lynch train is given some rails,
Yeah.
That's when it gets interesting. When he has some restriction, or maybe not restriction. I don't know how much Mark Frost restricted him. I think Mark Frost just kind of went along with him. A lot of the time when you hear them talking about it, Lynch did a lot of talking and Mark did a lot of writing.
Yeah. When I've heard about how they wrote the script, there's a lot of David Lynch lying on a sofa, almost like a stream of consciousness. And Mark Frost was writing it all up.
Yeah, I would say that it can be difficult when you do have a partnership like that to really, from the outside, know who did what precisely. But I think one thing that I think Lynch does benefit from is the genre framework. It's something he can deviate from and fly above, but with having that to come back to, that genre structure, I think is something that he needs.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he enjoys subverting genres. Taking you down a path where you think you know what's going to happen, and then he just takes a lurch to the left, and you're just like, whoa, what the hell just happened? Yeah,
I mean, Point and Cade's Lost Highway, which I think is probably. I mean, it's difficult to pin him down. I mean, I can see a couple of frames of a Lynch film and know that it's a Lynch film. But at the same time, he hasn't stayed still. I don't think. I mean, probably the closest you can get to saying that is maybe there are some similarities between Lost Highway and Mulholland Drive and Inland Empire. There are some thematic connections there.
Yeah.
But they're still quite different movies. I mean. He doesn't stay still very long.
Yeah, I think he just wants to keep moving forward and exploring and doing different things. So when the film stuff subsides, it's like, right, okay, let's bring the painting back. When the painting subsides, it's like, okay, I'm going to start making some music albums.
Yeah, but the thing I didn't expect genuinely was that we'd actually get back to Twin Peaks. That's the one thing.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah, I thought Inland Empire
Hallelujah.
was... Yeah. I thought Inland Empire was kind of the end of the film thing, and I thought he was just going to go away and work in other media after that. So the fact he's come back to television in such a big way definitely surprised me.
I see it as a huge gift from the cosmos to my 15-year-old self that was running around like a headless chicken trying to get scraps of episodes of various people's VHS tapes. Honestly, I still pinch myself. I'm not sure it's real.
Yeah,
it is happening again. 25 years later, crazy.
Yeah,
crazy.
And how fortuitous was that? Thing by Laura Palmer. She says to Agent Cooper, "I'll see you in 25 years."
Yeah, but I mean, I definitely think, and I saw an interview recently with Carl McLaughlin, and he said that the fact that Twin Peaks is back is in large part credit to the fans who this kind of surge of interest, possibly because. Video on demand had sort of taken over, and Twin Peaks was suddenly available on a lot of streaming services. So it was kind of gaining popularity again with students in their halls of residence, probably much like what happened with you, Rob, and your VHS renting. But there's a lot of people kind of discovering it, around this 25-year mark and tweeting about it, and sort of this surge of social media, an expression of that interest in social media, and I think in no small part is that responsible for Peaks coming back.
Mm. So how did you react to the news that it was coming back?
Well, I mean, it was up and down, wasn't it? I mean, it was crazy elation. I mean, we all, the three of us, talked about it. On Facebook. I mean, and then the news that he wasn't going to be part of it. I mean, God, it's like an emotional roller coaster.
Yeah, that was crazy. That was, oh my goodness.
I was fervently sort of tweeting away, no Lynch, no Lynch, no Peaks,
Yeah.
And then we got, what's amazing is that he's going to be he's co-writing and directing every episode, and I like the fact that it's going to be a closed event as well. That it's going to be a one-off thing, that it's going to be his full stop, his final statement on it.
I think that's been my hunger anyway. That's really this is absolutely, I think, what I've wanted.
Yeah, my whole life. More than anything.
God, your life's going to be so empty after this, Rob. Yeah, I was super elated, and like you said, Mark, just that roller coaster of, it's coming back, and he's directing it. Oh no, he's not directing it, and he's coming back, and now it's gone from 8 episodes to 18 episodes. What? So
yeah.
Whatever kind of like crazy tactics Lynch was pulling there, he's no dummy, and I think he knew that without him there really is no Twin Peaks, and the Showtime had to kind of like capitulate and give in, and
cough up the cash.
Yeah, because I get the impression that
this is art, God damn it.
Yeah, he wanted to do these 18 episodes, and I think there wasn't enough budget, and so the network said, well, we can do 8 or 9 episodes. And I think Lynch was just like, no, it's got to be this long, and if it can't be this long, I'm not doing it.
I can understand if he was probably scared that the same thing might happen again, that what happened at ABC.
Yeah.
Is it ABC Networks? That if he'd committed to do half of it, and then hopefully get recommissioned for another season, that risk of it not happening would, I completely agree that do the whole thing, get it out there, get it done, come what may.
Yeah.
Another How's Annie moment I don't need in my life.
So let's talk about quintessential Twin Peaks moments. Like, when did Twin Peaks cross over from intriguing TV to TV from another planet that drilled its way directly into your heart and mind?
That's what I said.
Yeah, I know. I'm reading it. So maybe for you, Mark, what's your quintessential Twin Peaks moment?
Yeah, I think I've touched on that actually. I think it was that moment, that first moment of contact with it, that that episode. I mean, it was so sort of, the murder, Maddie's murder. I mean, also just, it was really like head first into it. That the slow motion sort of murder, him swapping from Bob to Leland, and not even knowing these characters. I mean, it was really baptism by fire as a viewer, as a 14-year-old viewer as well. I mean, it was. It really left its stamp on me. I would say it was that, and couple that with the kind of the sort of non-verbal sort of recognition between all the other characters that this was a majorly emotional moment and something was happening again. And yeah, it's so powerful. I mean, I go back to it now. I can't go back to it too often because it's so intense. I really think it's an incredible episode. Well, that whole sequence, is just one of the finest things I've ever seen. Not just television, but in any sort of screen medium. Just incredible. And the blood, and you're going back to Missouri, Montana. It's yeah, it's indelible. It impressed itself on my mind in a way that nothing else has, and it got me hooked on Twin Peaks and David Lynch and probably on cinema and television in general. I mean, when I say cinema, I mean kind of possibly art cinema, or non-mainstream cinema.
Yeah.
What about you, Rob?
Well, I was hooked by it from the beginning. Just watching it from episode 1, the European Cup pilot. I think we watched first. Then we watched the pilot proper. Then episode 1. But I do still, nevertheless, strongly remember that it's episode 2 that for me it gets into its groove, and I'm completely invested. And it's the scene where Agent Cooper gives his outdoor lecture on Tibet. For me, that's
with the stone throwing.
Yeah, it's the rock throwing scene where you've got Lucy keeping score. You got Hawk with a bucket of rocks, and you got Andy over by the bottle, but not too near Andy. And that for me was the kind of the crystallizing moment where the show, it just really lets you know what it's about, and it's the moment where I know, I fall in love with Dale Cooper basically. And that's that kind of up until then. It's it's intriguing, it's fascinating, it's atmospheric and suspenseful, and it's brilliant. But it's the Tibet speech where I kind of I get Coop, and and from that moment when they've become that suddenly he and the sheriff's office have become this family that I know where my loyalties lie for the rest of it, and that's my really strong memory of watching it for the first time. It's just okay, yeah. That was the scene where I had complete orientation about how I feel about these people, and it's the other half of Twin Peaks. It's the light, warm, good side of the town that that is as important as the dark underbelly. It's the good people coming together.
Yeah, there was. I mean, that's an important point to make. I mean, there were so many kind of friendships. The friendship between Harry Truman, the sheriff, and Cooper. They were kind of touching. These. And that's a Lynch trait, I think. That he managed to balance this kind of grotesque, violent darkness with these incredibly human moments and friendships. The best of humanity, really.
And I like as well the fact that he subverted the typical thing where the FBI come in, from the big city. And the the local sheriffs don't want them there, and literally as soon as they first met, it's like no, we need your help, and they form a tight team from the get go, and that sort of thing just didn't happen on TV.
And it's no less Lynchian than any of the stuff with Leland and Bob and everyone else. It's there's no incredulity on part of Harry or anyone else when they're presented with this idea of the power and significance of dream. They're just up for it. It's like, yep, sure. They buy into this whole other
Well,
dimension completely.
There's a few moments. There's at least a couple of moments where I think Harry says, "Now, Coop, I followed you all the way on this. I followed the dreams and the dwarfs and
yeah. They come.
Now I've got hard evidence,
Oh yeah, they come. They do happen, but for me, it's just it's the rock throwing scene where when I just recall the first time seeing it, expecting the resistance, and Coop's met by none. It's just no. They just lean forward and they're open. It completely subverts expectation, and that's when I loved them all, and just wanted to come back every week.
It was a truly bizarre moment, actually. That was a part of a federal investigation, and it was conducted by throwing stones at a milk bottle. And I don't think I thought that was particularly weird when I was 14 or 15 when I saw it. I thought it was, maybe that's what the FBI, that's how the FBI do things, I guess. Pretty cool. And now obviously it's kind of absurd. You're right. It's as Lynchian as anything else, But yeah, and it definitely, you're right. It was definitely a tone setter, I think, for the rest of the series.
Yeah, and also the fact that it takes place in the woods with the mountains, with the golden. I'm not sure when they shot. It's definitely the magic hour with this kind of beautiful. Yeah. Low sun on the mountaintop peeking through at the same. So it just combines. It combines. It's the good side of the town. Congregating,
Yeah, and actually, what we're talking about, the warmer side of Twin Peaks is often embodied in its colours as well. You've got this kind of fuzzy, warm browns and reds. The wood in the Great Northern Hotel, the wood that's literally everywhere. Yeah. There is this warmth to the show.
Yeah, the quintessential moment of Twin Peaks for me was a moment that I'd completely forgotten about, and then when me and Rob were watching the last episode a couple of days ago,
by mistake, we didn't mean to. It just happened.
It just happened. Was a moment that I'd completely forgotten about, and I'd almost clapped my hands and just went, "This is amazing." Which is when Audrey chains herself to the bank vault.
Yeah.
And then there's this really, really old bank employee.
It takes forever to get across
that's it. And
the vault floor, yeah.
Exactly. And nobody other than David Lynch would have just held it on a wide, not cutting, and just, it's beautiful. Just watching him shuffle across the floor, come halfway back because he can't remember what it is, and then go back again. It's beautiful and it's amazing, and nobody other than David Lynch would have thought of it or had the audacity, or this is the last episode, where you've got to wrap things up and you've got to move things along, and he takes the time to do this. It's brilliant. So for me, that's my quintessential moment.
I must say, the more cynical filmmaker in me thinks that might have been a bit of shameless padding for an episode that didn't have much of a script, but
True.
I love it all the same. I love it all the same.
Yeah, I mean, I don't care whether it was because the script was short or they had a script and David Lynch came in and just went, right, started tearing pages out the script, going, we're not doing that. Whatever the reason, it's genius. I love it.
It is. Yeah.
So we can't look forward to season 3 without at least touching on Fire Walk with Me, because apparently this is like required viewing for people going into season 3. So I just wanted to touch base with you guys and find out your thoughts on Fire Walk with Me and how it relates to the TV series.
It's a different beast. It's a different creature than the series. I think it's a colder, darker place. And I perhaps love it less for that reason. It's fascinating to see Laura's last days, and I think at the time I was just grateful. I was still that kid running around trying to find bits and pieces on other people's videotapes, but I was grateful that I was just grateful that there was more Twin Peaks. But I do think probably at that point for me the spell was starting to break a little bit. I don't think it was helped by the fact there were some real clanger lines in there. I remember sort of being in the cinema and Laura Palmer does the "I'm a turkey, gobble gobble." It's not a clanger line. It's a Lynch line. But I also think Twin Peaks is such an intimate thing that seeing it in the cinema, sort of transposing everything into the cinema in that way, and watching it with an audience, and people were laughing at lines like that, and somehow for me it broke it somehow, if that makes any sense. It was. I think Twin Peaks is such an intensely intimate kind of personal place. At least that's how it was for me, and I feel it fits better on a small screen. I love the opening coda with the axe that goes into the television, and sure, screw the rest of the audience. I still think it's an audacious, fantastic kind of statement, and I also kind of like the sort of fuck you element of like, well, I'm not going to show you how Annie is. I'm going to go back. I'm going to go backwards, and I'm going to, so that was frustrating. I think a lot of people were frustrated by that, and I think there was a sort of knee-jerk reaction against the film because it sort of refused to answer all the questions that were left hanging. I think Ray Wise, who was brilliant in the series, I mean, incredible, from the kind of mourning father to the kind of this menacing sort of shadowy character. He's kind of difficult to watch because he's sort of gurning. He's doing his evil gurning all over the place. He's suddenly kind of Count Dracula, and it's sort of too much. And Cheryl Lee kind of overbakes things as well for me. They both give great performances, but they for me they sort of there was this wonderful balance, and it may be that because Leland, Ray Wise didn't know that he was the killer for the vast majority of the series, apart from the last 3 episodes or 3 or 4 episodes where we find out, and then he dies. So maybe that there was a nuance to this character that had been created that just wasn't there when we got to the film and we knew that he was the killer, and he played it like a killer,
But obviously, I mean, at that point, the cat's out of the bag. Definitely,
but still, I there was something, and I guess it falls to Lynch in a way that he allowed Ray Wise to sort of do kind of his evil gurning at the window.
To be honest, I loved Ray Wise.
I knew you were going to say that.
I love it. The scene, where he says to Laura, the hand washing scene where
look, there's dirt way under those fingernails.
Yeah,
it's a great scene. It's super tense. I love that. It's a great scene. It's a great scene. It's a great scene. No doubt, it's a great scene. You're absolutely right. And there are great scenes in it. And there's the World of Blue scene when she's in the roadhouse and she knows she's lost somehow. She's on the slope that's just going down. There's no coming back from where she is, and it's all unspoken. You just feel it. It's super moving, and there are great things in the film, no doubt. But for me, I think some of the magic was gone from. I think it was a colder place, and maybe it was because the warmer Twin Peaks that we were talking about before just wasn't there, and maybe it had no place there. Maybe this story was because it was absolutely a downward spiral, and it was all about Laura Palmer. But
so, what about you, Rob? What are your thoughts on it?
I remember after getting to the end of Series 2, rushing straight to rent out the VHS of Firewalk with Me for answers. So the first watch was just a shock. But I've grown to like chunks of it now. But I think my problem is everything I do like about it is the new stuff. Chet Desmond, Agent Stanley, Harry Dean Stanton, David Bowie turning up as Agent Jeffries, all that stuff.
I love all that.
It's the Teresa Banks investigation. All that. Everything I dislike about it is the return to Twin Peaks. I don't recognise the Leland from this film as the same character or characters from the TV series. It doesn't, and it's not even what's Laura's mother's name?
Mrs. Palmer.
Mrs. Palmer. Yeah. In Firewalk with Me, she seems complicit in the abuse in a way she doesn't in the TV series. It doesn't, and I would have loved a Firewalk with Me that had been about Twin Peaks, but never actually went to Twin Peaks.
It's interesting about the Leland character. I think what was so compelling about him is that we identified with him to a point because he was so conflicted.
Yeah.
About what he was doing.
He's a victim
and
too.
What was happening? Yeah. And that was gone in Firewalk with Me.
And also, I actually feel there's a great deal to be said for not knowing Laura Palmer directly, but knowing her through the town.
Yeah, it's like L'Avventura. It's
exactly.
She's the whole. She's the empty space that we. She's absolutely at the center of everything, but simply because she's absent.
Yes, she is the sum total of everyone's idea about her, and yet she's none of those things. So I kind of think
and maybe all of them.
Yeah, and maybe all of them.
Yeah.
And it kills it if we know too much about her, and I think that's one of the problems with Firewalk with Me is that it kind of it starts to fill that hole in, and I think that's just an inherent problem. That's the thing. I would have loved to have seen a Gordon Cole's FBI investigate the wider mystery, but never go within the circle. If you know what I mean.
I would have loved to have seen that the spin-off series with Kiefer Sutherland and Chris Isaac.
And just more Blue Rose cases. But one thing I do admire about it greatly is the fact that it doesn't in any way. Well, it does actually, but it doesn't really go. It doesn't go out of its way to resolve the season 2 cliffhanger. It just gives it a bit more context.
Well, I think he had time. I think he thought he had time because it was supposed to be, if I remember this correctly, it was supposed to be the first in a trilogy of Twin Peaks films.
I never knew that.
Yeah, I did know that he had other films in that world that he wanted to direct, and I think the fact that it got critically panned didn't help matters.
He had a deal with I think it was a French studio.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think it just bombed so badly that he ended up not going back to Twin Peaks.
Yeah. Well, as far as I'm concerned, you guys are totally wrong. I'm right because I love this film. It's for me, it's up there with Lost Highway as one of the best Lynch films.
Trust me, I really think there's a lot in it, and I even like there's a lot in the Twin Peaks stuff that I like. But I agree with Rob in questioning how necessary it was to experience that.
Yeah, the only thing I have a problem with Firewalk with Me is David Bowie's appearance. Yeah, his dodgy American accent, and he looks like he's just come off the Let's Dance tour.
He probably had just come off the Let's Dance tour.
I know. If he'd been
Jason,
wearing what the other FBI agents were wearing, I would have bought into it. But the fact that he's wearing like this Hawaiian shirt and these high-waisted white pants and stuff, it's like, dude, come on. You want me to believe this guy is an FBI agent?
He's just got back from Havana.
Yeah, I know that, because when you see the missing pieces and there's that scene where he disappears in a.
Do you know? I forgot. I have seen the missing pieces, but I've sort of forgotten it.
Yeah, there's a bit where you see Bowie in Havana and he vanishes in like this white explosion, and it kind of like it just gives you a little bit of why he's like that. But obviously, the missing pieces aren't in the final film, so. For the audience, they just see David Bowie turn up, looking like he's going to grab a microphone from somewhere and start singing. It's bizarre.
I love it. I love it. I love all that FBI stuff, and I love Bowie. So don't never speak of the dead.
Well, I love the whole scene. With like Cooper looking up at the camera and going back into the room.
Yeah.
That whole thing is so super creepy. It's
brilliant. And that whole kind of doppelganger, and our name, the Formica Table, is taken from that movie. So there's actually, and saying that it doesn't feed into it does in a kind of frustrating adversarial way. It kind of it gives you some kind of it hints at threads to like the final episode.
Yes, it does.
With Cooper's doppelganger, and if I remember rightly, isn't there a scene with Heather Graham on the floor covered in blood or something? Or maybe that's
doesn't she appear?
As a visitation, doesn't she?
Yeah, she appears in bed with Laura. That's right. Yeah, So there are these kind of hints at it.
Yeah.
But it's mad that he chose to go that way. I mean, it's crazy.
So, given that Lynch has said that Fire Walk with Me is required viewing, and you both have certain reservations about Fire Walk with Me, does this make you concerned at all about what's going to be going down in season 3 or the tone of the atmosphere?
Not for me, not in the slightest. No. I for one thing, I think Lynch is in a position of power, happiness, confidence, and relaxation now going into this. Back when he did Fire Walk with Me, he was pretty embattled over the whole thing. That's not my explanation of why I don't think Fire Walk with Me works necessarily, but I have no concerns or worries about this new series at all. Just boundless curiosity, really.
I think there's for me, and seeing the trailers now, which give literally almost nothing away, but what they do is they give a sense of tone, which definitely hint at a more Fire Walk with Me, dare I even say Inland Empire feel. There's a coolness, there's a coldness to these images and these characters, and there's something kind of there's a more surgical Lynch than the warm and fuzzy Twin Peaks that we've been talking about. And I hope it's not all that,
Yeah, I mean, we have 18 hours. I'm sure there's going to be moments of levity.
There's those moments in Inland Empire where it's there's a whole section of it that takes place in Poland, which is purely just paranoid and cold, and I suppose Lynch has sort of gone there increasingly, sort of post Peaks. But yeah, I hope he doesn't go away from that warmth and humour that Twin Peaks the series had, because it is Twin Peaks after all.
Yeah.
And I'm not knocking that. I'm just saying, and I love almost all of the post-Peaks stuff, but it is Twin Peaks, and Twin Peaks, part of its charm is this kind of specific sort of folksy element that was there in Blue Velvet as well. It's specifically in sort of Jeffrey Beaumont's court when he's courting. That's old-fashioned. When he starts sort of dating, is that what they're doing with Laura Dern? There's the kind of chicken walk.
Yeah,
and Laura Dern has the dream about the birds filling the sky and taking off, and it's like it's these kind of touching moments, these touching Lynch moments that balance out the violence and the darkness that we were talking about.
Yeah,
I'm yet to see.
I just hope that it's not the same filmmaker who made Inland Empire who's coming back to Twin Peaks.
Well, I've got news for you. Technically, it is.
Yeah, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. Well, I think one thing that I'm curious about though is simply because the unavoidable fact that it's 25 years later. He's 25. That's a quarter of a century older than he was when he made it.
I can. Your maths is correct.
Well, yeah. Your concerns and preoccupations and death is much closer at that kind of age, and the young characters are now
for all of us.
Yeah, well, exactly. But it's going to be. I'm curious to see how just those inevitable facts of life are going to flavor it. Because they're going to be there. They're going to be there.
Yeah, I mean that's a good point. I mean, because so much of Twin Peaks was in the youth. It was the lifeblood of the series. Cooper aside, I mean, who was also pretty young. I mean, he must have been in his late 20s, maybe.
Oh yeah, no older.
I hope that there's going to be a sufficiently charming cast of fresh faces.
Well, we do have a lot of new characters and a lot of really young characters.
I know it's a massive cast. Yeah, and but there was just this particular chemistry from like Dan Ashbrook and Machen and Mick and what's his name, the guy who played James. There was this kind of magic, and it's like, well, I mean, I hope that they're able to catch the lightning again, because it will be like watching a new Star Wars movie with just Carrie Fisher and Harrison Ford and Mark Hamill. It would be like,
But I think one of the things also is the fact that what flavour of Dale Cooper are we getting? That's
I can't wait.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't wait. But is what's happened to the guy? Is Bob still about? And how's Annie? And
Well, and Heather Graham isn't part of the new cast, so maybe we'll never find out.
I was going to ask that, actually.
No, she's not part of it, so that's an interesting omission. And obviously, we're not going to have the man from another place as well. He's not part of it.
Yeah, he's saying horrible things on Facebook. He comes off as just a tiny bit mental.
Yeah. I mean that.
And a little bit bitter.
Yeah, I mean that it's kind of sad, if he is having some kind of like mental health issues.
But he seems like he's sort of having a breakdown.
Yeah, which is kind of sad.
Because I follow him on Facebook.
Oh, really? Really?
Yeah, but he's very, very bitter and angry.
Wow.
And
well,
I just to follow up on I read that actually the new series is not all going to be set in Twin Peaks.
Yes, it's going to be all over the US, which is going to be interesting. It gives us like a much broader canvas. So I don't know quite what that means, but
I'm slightly wary about that as well, because I think so much about Twin Peaks was well, like I said before, has this magnificent sense of place. It has this sort of wondrous magic about it that is sort of full of possibilities and mystery. but it's also kind of closed in. It's claustrophobic at the same time.
For me,
and that was such a massive part of Twin Peaks. I think that you really got a sense of this town and the you know, all the locations in it, and I think if it's darting about too much, then is it still going to feel like Twin Peaks?
Well,
I know Firewall. Yeah.
We're assuming that it's darting about. It could just be a gradual move across the country. It could be more of a kind of like a Deer Meadow vibe to it.
Well, if it does that, I mean, if it goes the same way as Firewall with me, I mean, there was at least this sense that, you know, when you were doing the Teresa Banks, you know, we had the whole Teresa Banks investigation. There was a sense that we were on the road towards Twin Peaks.
Yeah. It could,
and once we got there, we stayed there.
Yeah.
You know.
So it could be the same thing where we're starting somewhere else, and it's like all roads lead back to Twin Peaks, and maybe even the first couple of episodes we don't even visit Twin Peaks.
Yeah. I think obviously at its core, Twin Peaks is a soap opera. That's the form. So if it does deviate from that, I'll be interested to see it. But if it deviates from the kind of the essential core premise, will it sit right?
Wow.
Or will it become something else?
I think that was a huge part of its popularity as well. That it was that it had this format that was the same as Dallas or whatever. These massive soap operas that got syndicated globally. You know, it had the same format as all those things, and yet it was made by an artist like David Lynch. You know, who managed to kind of seed all his particular kind of idiosyncrasies into it. You know, but it was within this format, and I think that's what allowed it to be popular, is that it absolutely more or less obeyed the rules of the soap opera.
But do you think it's the right thing to do, to not try and recapture it, to go, okay, well that was fine for, you know, the late 80s, early 90s, but we're in a different place now, and we should be doing something different, something updated, something modern that perhaps pushes the boundaries of what Twin Peaks can be.
I trust Lynch. I'm glad that he's doing it, and I'm sure that whatever he makes, like Inland Empire, whatever he makes, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be a ride.
Yeah,
it's going to be worth seeing, and it's going to be worth going along with. But
I'm most encouraged, I think, by the fact that all the actors that I've seen interviewed all seem to have like this giddy brightness in their eyes, going, "Oh my God, you have no idea what's coming," and that makes me excited, because I think the cast are as much of they're fans just like we are, and if they're like super buzzed about it, then
I think some of them are pleased to be working.
There's that, but people like Carl McLachlan and Machen Amick, who have been working pretty much continuously. I've seen interviews with those guys. I mean, those guys don't necessarily need the work, but they still have that giddiness. They still have that brightness in their eyes, which kind of fills me with confidence. It's like, okay, we're back. Let's buckle in. We're going to have a heck of a ride.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing Laura Dern opposite Carl McLachlan.
Me too.
That's kind of one of the. That's one of the. Yeah, Oh, hang on. Do you have a problem with Laura Dern?
I think Jason might.
Do you have a problem? That didn't sound like a resounding no. I don't have a problem. Do you have a problem with Laura Dern?
She's not my favourite actress. Why
would that be, Jason?
Just a lot of popping neck muscles. I think in both Blue Velvet and not Inland Empire. What was the other one? What else was she in? Wild at Heart. Thank you.
I love Wild at Heart. I love Wild at Heart.
Actually, bizarrely, Wild at Heart is one of my not quite as favourite David Lynch films.
Yeah,
I think
I'm mild at heart about Wild at Heart, to be honest.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
then
I think
again,
for many years I
I
said it
haven't
was my
seen it
favourite.
for a very long time.
Yeah, I watched it again recently. I mean, I love it, because even a bad David Lynch film is it's usually pretty good.
It's not a bad film.
But what I'm saying is, in your mind, you have like a mental rank of the output of David Lynch, and it's
Number one, Wild at Heart.
Really?
For me, absolutely, yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well,
Yeah.
I guess there's no accounting for taste, but it definitely doesn't come in my.
It's
going to
make things interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I was happy to see Harry Dean Stanton in the trailer.
Yeah, a lot of people thought he was dead, but apparently not.
No, he's just 100 and something now. That's he's fine. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I loved him in Firewalk with Me. He was just glorious.
Yeah.
He's been places.
It's what are the other big names that are coming back? That are coming to Twin Peaks. There's Laura Dern. There's Harry Dean Stanton. There's
James Belushi, which is a weird one. Mike Cera as well. That dorky actor.
Yeah.
Was James Belushi? He was in Wild Palms, wasn't he?
I loved Wild Palms. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a bit of a Twin Peaks rip-off, wasn't it?
Oh, completely. Yeah. Well, it was.
Well, I think it was being developed. Rip-off is a bit. Yeah, it's a bit strong.
Twin Peaks gave
because it was
permission.
a comic strip at the same time. Definitely. Twin Peaks created as it did for so many things, created a window.
Yes, suddenly certain things were allowed on TV.
But it was a strip. It was a comic book strip in, I think, Details magazine and it had been running for years before Twin Peaks. So I mean, it wasn't like it was. It wasn't ripping anything off. I disagree with that, and I also think Wild at Heart is a brilliant film. Wild at Heart, Wild Palms was both wild, both wild things were brilliant.
Yeah. So who else is coming back? That's fairly well known. Well, we've got Balthazar Getty. Who's in Lost Highway. So he's coming back. Trent Reznor, who's
acting.
Bizarre. Yeah.
Wow.
Has he ever done acting before?
I don't know.
Apart from in his music videos.
Well, he did appear with Bowie in I'm Afraid of Americans. I'm
Afraid of Americans.
That was a good bit of acting he did. There was a good bit of running after a taxi acting, I thought. Yeah.
The hardest of all acting, I think. Who else have we got? We got Tim Roth. Which is I always like me a bit of Tim Roth. Can't go wrong there. Amanda how do you pronounce her name? Amanda Seyfried? Seyfried?
Oh yeah.
Seyfried?
No, I don't think it's Seyfried.
No, I'm saying it wrong. Yeah. I'm butchering it.
Yeah.
That's I'm going to get letters.
See, a lot of this is news to me because I've been really deliberately avoiding information about it.
Sorry,
no,
we've ruined it for you.
Oh no, it's fine now. But I mean, over the last year or so, I've kind of I've been doing the opposite. I've been really ignoring all this stuff. So no, this is just news to me. So
yeah. So
continue.
Another wild card would be Eddie Vedder, the singer.
Sorry, you said that. I just heard Roger Federer in my head. That's yeah. Sorry, ignore me. Carry on.
So I don't think I've ever seen Eddie Vedder act in anything. So.
I don't know who that is.
It's wasn't it Pearl Jam or something? He was the singer from Pearl Jam.
Right.
You must have heard
There's a
Pearl
pattern
Jam. Here. Naomi Watts, who was fantastic in Mulholland Drive. So she's back.
Makes sense.
Who else? Tom Sizemore.
Right.
I think
he has a drinking problem.
What,
I think he's got an everything problem.
Yeah.
Well, that's gonna make...
So maybe it's a bit of a what Lynch did for Dennis Hopper.
Maybe.
Dennis Hopper, no one would touch him with a barge pole.
Yeah.
Pre Blue Velvet.
Yeah. And then he came out with his Frank Booth and Oh my goodness.
And everybody wanted to embrace him and invite him round for tea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gosh, who else? Well, I think it's interesting to, as we touched on earlier, to think about the cast who aren't coming back as well, because we've got the vast majority of people who are coming back, but we have no Harry S. Truman. So
Yeah, that's interesting.
yeah. So I think who's going to be playing his, because they're going to have a new sheriff, which is played by.
What about Joan Chen?
No,
is
she's not coming back. As far as we know, she's still a draw handle.
She's still in a doorknob.
Yeah, doorknob. Yeah. In the Great Northern. We're not having the Man from Another Place.
Although Miguel Ferrer is back.
Yes,
he dead now, and I'm going to feel really sad.
Yeah.
Did Bowie ever get to shoot? Did he get to shoot anything at all?
No, I don't think he did.
That's a real shame.
Yeah.
Because he was the key to the whole thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That we might have got the Havana episode.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
And we're also not getting any Agent Desmond as well, who I would have loved to see Chris Isaac come
that
back.
would have been great to see Chris Isaac come back, yeah.
And obviously Catherine Coulson, who played the Log Lady. She
that's
died,
sad.
I believe, during filming. So I know that she'd filmed some of her scenes. I don't know whether she'd filmed all of her scenes, but she'd definitely filmed some stuff.
The Log Lady really is one of my favourite characters of the whole thing, Yeah. In fact, if there's one character who incorporates nearly every aspect of Twin Peaks, it's her. For me,
she was this kind of link to the Lynch and Frost sides of Twin Peaks. I think she sort of existed in the real world, and everybody had some kind of opinion or connection with her. Everyone knew about her. But yet she, via her log, had some sort of insight into there's these other things that are happening out in the woods, and
she's that stock soap character who has access to every social sphere in some way or another. She's an outsider, but she still manages to be present in every single location somehow. And yet she's also got this spiritual access to the woods. If she's not in it, I'm going to,
Well, I think she's going to be in it, but just not as much as we would have liked, which is very, very sad. I thought she was great as well. Are you looking forward to any of the original cast in particular, apart from Cooper, obviously?
It's just going to be funny to see him.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to be funny to see like Dana Ashbrook and see if they could, because that's one of the weird things is that they were such a stellar cast. I mean, I haven't seen much of Twin Peaks recently, but I mean, I just think certainly like when they were Lynch directed, I think sort of 6, 7, or 8 episodes altogether.
Yeah.
But I mean, they were. It wasn't just the Lynch episodes. I mean, Machen and Mick, Dana Ashbrook, James Marshall, who played James.
Yeah.
They were so good. They were very, very good, and they were consistently good.
Yeah, it was great casting.
It's weird that people like Dana Ashbrook and James Marshall, they've not done very much in the last 25 years. That's weird.
Yeah.
And Cheryl Lee as well.
Yeah.
That's odd, I think. And it'll be interesting to see them come back and how they cope with being kind of thrust into the right in the middle of things again.
Yeah, and in terms of their characters, they were kids in the first series, and now
especially Machen and Mick, she was like 18, I think, when they...
when she was 16 when she went to audition for the role.
Right, yeah.
So, I mean, they're the ones who...
And she looks lovely, by the way. I mean, she still looks fantastic.
she does.
I think one thing about Firewalk with Me is it Mara Kelly who replaced
Oh yeah,
Donna.
Yeah, she was that was for me that was one major positive, major plus.
Yes.
I think for Firewalk with Me.
Yeah.
She was that was a good move. It was a good replacement.
Mm-hmm. But I don't think we're getting any Donna at all.
No Donna. Yeah.
I don't see any. Well, unless one of the unknown actors.
What about Donna Kebab?
Well,
Sorry.
perhaps.
Delete so much of this. Okay.
I mean,
yeah.
actually, it's to bring in the Goonies for a second, because obviously it was inevitable that obviously you have to talk about the Goonies on a Twin Peaks podcast. But when they talk about doing a sequel to the Goonies, the cast say, well, 20, 35 years later, if those kids are still in Astoria, Oregon, they're going to be drinking, because really they'd have left. So and one cool thing about coming to Twin Peaks 25 years later is just the natural migration of characters who aren't coming back because they wouldn't be there anymore, and people who are there now either because the teenagers from the first series now have children or whatever. So. And to be honest, that goes to the actors in it as well. It's that trauma of those 25 years passing for the cast is going to be something that I'm looking forward to seeing.
Cool. Okay. Well, I think we should wrap it up. So I just want to do a quick round the table, just in a couple of words. Your thoughts, hopes, and fears, bottled up in a nice succinct way. What can we expect from season 3, Mark?
Can we ask Rob first?
Yes, we can. Rob.
Okay, well, I'm not expecting it to be bad, but if I were worried, I think my main fear would be that Lynch disappears up his own Black Lodge, if you know what I mean. Which I don't think he's above doing, because he's because he isn't.
It's even interesting to watch him do.
Oh
that,
yeah, but because because he is arty and cryptic,
he can afford to.
Yeah, but he's inherently judged differently from other storytellers. Which can be a bit of a critical get out of jail free card if he produces something that's weird and incoherent but not actually very good. But I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think this is. They wouldn't be doing this 25 years later. I don't think. He certainly wouldn't be, and he's fought to do this.
Yeah, I think if he's doing it absolutely for the right reasons, and that's a rare thing.
Yeah, I just don't want to. I know what I want from it, or I think I do, but I don't want to be given it the way I'm expecting it. I want to be surprised, and that's it, really.
All right. Anything to add to that, Mark?
Wanting to be surprised is really a nice way of expressing my expectations, because I really have. I don't want. I mean, there was a pleasure in Firewalk with Me not serving up, what everyone wanted, which was a continuation of season 2. Season 3, by its nature, has to be that. Mm-hmm. So how far Lynch can deviate from that and still be satisfying in some way. It will be interesting to see how that's pulled off. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, we've only got about a week to go until we find out, and we get the 2-hour first episode. I'm not sure whether that's episode 1 and 2 running on, or whether it's just one long episode. But not long to go now.
I'm nervous. I'm nervous.
Excellent. Whew. All right. Okay. I think.
All right. Fine. Was that all right?
I think so.
Was that all right?
Awesome. Right. Well,
I think all the good stuff is earlier.
Well, I'm going to get into it. I'm going to edit it, and
That's a very good idea. Yeah.
Thank fuck for that.
Okay, I've stopped the recording now, and remember, don't close your browsers until it says that it's all done. Oh, it says Rob audio upload complete. There you go. All audio uploads complete. We're done, so we're fine. Yeah.